Hi everyone, my name is Lydia. I'm the executive director here at Wild Goose Creative. We're a nonprofit community arts organization, and Tea Talks is one of our monthly events here, and we're really excited that we can continue this online and provide this content for Columbus and for our followers and the followers of Tea Talks as well. So thank you, Felicia, for organizing this. It's such a great monthly program that we have here. So in terms of announcements, we've got a fundraiser coming up on August 14th. It's online. It's called Bet on Goose, and it's basically a picnic from home. And it's super fun, and all of the proceeds go to support our operations, including opening our doors and print content. So you can find more about that on our social media as well as on our website and everything like that. So keep an eye out, and I'm going to mute myself, and then Felicia's going to unmute herself, and we're going to get started. So thank you, everyone.
Hi. I was trying to figure out how to make that work. Okay. So everyone, thank you for coming. This is Tea Talks. I am Felicia DeRosa, and this is our first time doing it as a Zoom. If it feels a little clunky, I do apologize, but we are rolling along with the technology as we do. And let me see. I don't see myself on screen. Okay, so while we're doing this, I'm going to read off a little bit about Tea Talks. Oh, there we are. So Tea Talks, I will give you our usual lowdown if you are new to seeing Tea Talks. As Lydia was mentioning, we do every fourth Wednesday of the month, except if it happens to land on Christmas or a major holiday of some kind. And during the pandemic, we've been basically just having folks remotely record a piece that they would send to me and I'd post on the page, and we decided to be a little bit more online with everyone else. So the short description of what Tea Talks is, it's trans storytelling. Also known as Trans Talks, so Tea Talks for short. We seek to lift voices, raise awareness, and inspire healing through the power of storytelling with the hope of dismantling discrimination and violence against the trans community at large. I have a background in teaching, and my belief is if people have proper education, this dismantles a lot of misconceptions and ignorance, which can typically lead to overblown misinformation that could eventually lead to violence. So, we're starting with all of us just sharing stories of our experiences of life and how we do. And I want to read over our house rules that we have here. So our basic house rules is for Trans Talks, for Tea Talks, there is no hate speak. Hate speak includes, but is not limited to, exclusionary terms, stereotyping, racism, lewd or explicit speak that demeans an individual or a group. All are welcome here. So let's learn how to be together and share space with our intersectionality. We are all unique with special life experiences. So let's be together with open minds and hearts and come together in these shared experiences as trans people. Also on our list of things that are important is respect. Please respect the space, or in this case, the virtual space. The speakers, yourself, and each other. There is no wrong way to be transgender. All are seen here, all are loved, and all are valid. And I'm just going to say ahead of time, I want to thank all of our speakers who are participating today. It's sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge to get in front of the mic or on camera to share stories about things. So I want to commend you on your bravery and your willingness to share and to help enlighten potential allies or potential family members that might be tuning in, and also, for helping to outreach to people who might be dealing with their trans identity alone and looking to connect, which is another big component of what we're doing here. So in that vein, this is a safe space. You are welcome and included here. Your existence matters. We are not here to judge or exclude anyone for any reason. This is also, though, a brave space. Let's be authentic, true to ourselves and our journeys. Let's give each other grace in order to learn from each other and to grow. This is a space then for education. If at any point anything is triggering, feel free to take a break in this virtual sense. If you're watching, you could put the speaker on mute if you need. Perhaps, go walk and get a drink of water, whatever you need to do to take care of your own mental health and to, make sure that you are respecting your own personal boundaries and, if need be, take a breath. To clarify, for those who may not know, a safe space is ideally one that doesn't incite judgment based on identity or experience, where the expression of both can exist and be affirmed without fear of repercussion and without the pressure to educate. While learning may occur in these spaces, the ultimate goal is to provide support. A brave space, on the other hand, encourages dialogue, recognizing difference and holding each person accountable to do the work of sharing experiences and coming to new understandings, which is a feat that is oftentimes hard and typically can be uncomfortable. But I believe that together we can change minds, change hearts, lives, and who knows, maybe even the world. So we're all in this together. And that is my usual spiel for starting things. So I'm going to go ahead and get up the old, we're modifying stuff. So we usually have ASL interpreters, but because of the mechanics of Zoom, if you are someone who is watching this and you are hearing impaired, you should be able to use the closed captioning feature. If not during the live broadcast, then once the final recording is posted later. I have tried that out a few times and it seems to work okay, at least on my system. So hopefully that'll work for you if that's a need that you have. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right in. Our first speaker tonight is Kai Lin. Pronouns are they, them. Kai is a CCAD alumnus and a local Columbus barista who's very invested in making the world better in whatever little way that they can. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can do this little technique here. I'm going to mute myself and Kai, you will be on.
You're good? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna preface this all by saying I'm not a public speaker and I have a lot of anxiety. So if it is obvious that I am reading off of notes that I have written, then I apologize. But yeah, so like Felicia said, my name is Kai. I am a 24-year-old non-binary individual. I have been out as trans for a little over 2 years now. I was actually one of the last amongst my small group of like trans friends that realized that I was not cis. And even now, I still kind of struggle with the idea of being trans, being a non-binary individual. There's always a lot of pressure from the outside world about being quote unquote not trans enough to be included. And even though I have since begun a physical transition, sometimes in my head, I still question whether or not I am, like, I've earned the title of trans. And I want to be very clear and get this straight right away that there is no such thing as being trans enough. If you feel like you don't identify with your birth assigned gender, then you have every right to use the word trans to describe yourself. And I kind of wanted to, with the topic and everything of discussion for this talk, I really wanted to, I guess, talk about dysphoria a little bit, because dysphoria is a really funky thing. And I've learned a lot about it, just especially in the last few years since being in the trans community. And most of the time when people think about dysphoria, they specifically are thinking about like a combination of social and body dysphoria. But there's a little bit more to it than those that are like lesser known or talked about. And I kind of wanted to like briefly break those down. Social dysphoria is mostly about how other people perceive you. Like when somebody looks at you out in the world, what is the immediate like box that they put you in? And like, for example, I feel incredibly dysphoric whenever anybody like refers to me as like miss or ma'am or like anything along that line. Body dysphoria is a lot more personal, and it's more so about how you view aspects of your own body, and how like they might seem wrong, they don't seem to fit you. Examples of this would be how like I feel like my face shape is too soft, or like my voice like isn't deep enough, or chest isn't flat up, like, you know, things like that. And for me, it affects my self-esteem pretty badly. And for a lot of people, it presents as like sadness, uneasiness, disassociation, like lots of different things. Mental and emotional dysphoria is a lot more ambiguous, and it's actually something that I'm like still trying to like wrap my head around. But from what I understand, it's like mostly when your like thoughts and interests don't align with what you feel like you should be like thinking of and interested in. And a way that this might present is like when you like misgender yourself in your head, or you call yourself by your dead name or something like that. And I don't often experience it, but like a example would be like whenever I get upset with myself, I will often like misgender myself in my head, which is, you know, kind of sucks. And then lastly, there's sexual dysphoria, which specifically comes up, unsurprisingly, when you're in a sexual situation. It mostly deals about how you feel about like genitalia, or how you feel like your partner or partners perceive you when you're in a sexual situation. And when it comes to being trans and having dysphoria, you might have all of these, you might have one or two of them. A lot of the times the things can like intersect and overlap each other. And it's possible to like one day, or like have it come and go. One day you might be totally fine with an aspect of yourself, and the next day it makes you uncomfortable. And that's part of why trans is such an expansive umbrella term, and why transitioning is not the same for everybody. It's also important to understand that that's part of why there are so many different like identities. You might be a binary trans person, or you might be somewhere like on the vast spectrum of non-binary identities. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, like gender is not like a straight line where you are on one end or the other, somewhere in between. It's a lot. And then like people's perception of gender is affected by a lot of things. And I think that something that's really important to keep in mind is that nobody other than yourself really has any right to say what you should identify as. The act of physically transitioning is something that is seen as a really big deal for a lot of people, and in a lot of ways it is. There are an unfortunate amount of people who feel like surgery and hormones are required to be truly trans, which is absolutely not the case. For me, I struggled for a very, very long time about whether or not I wanted to start taking hormones. And it's something that I talked a lot with my therapist about. And there's something that they said to me that has really stuck with me. I kind of wanted to talk about. They asked me what about hormonal transitioning like scared me or worried me the most. And my immediate thought was, I was just like, it's just such a permanent thing, in that it seemed like a really daunting thing. And they took one look at me, and they were just like, has getting tattoos ever made you feel that way? And if you don't know me, I have quite a few tattoos. And my immediate answer was no, they've never have, and I don't think they ever will. They've only ever made me feel more like myself, the me that I want to be. And my therapist then asked me how I felt hormonal transitioning was any different. And that's like something that really kind of clicked in my head. And like I just kind of did start thinking about it as any of my other like body modifications. It's just something that brings me closer to the person that I see as me in my head. And that's something that I really, really hope that everybody is able to achieve someday. The ability to see the person that you want to see when you look in the mirror. And for a lot of people, myself included, if you're feeling dysphoria, a lot of the time that seems like it might be an impossible thing. But it's not the case. A lot of people, like, you can definitely get there. And one quote that I've seen going around Facebook a lot recently that I kind of wanted to share is from Jacob Tobia, who a lot of you might know as the voice of Double Trouble from the Netflix adaptation of She-Ra. And they were on The Daily Show a while back, and they said, the future that I want to live in is not some future where there's no gender and everybody wears gray and shaves their head. I want to live in a world where gender is a playful thing, where there's no patriarchy, no misogyny, none of the things that make gender suck, and all of the things that make gender great. And I really have to agree with that. I feel like gender is something that you can play with a lot. I feel like it should be, it's unfortunate how frowned upon it is to let people like play and experiment with their gender and their presentation. And I think that it's really great when people do take steps to like experiment and find a place where they're happy with themselves. But yeah, that's the majority of what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to thank you guys all for your time, and I really hope that I was able to articulate this appropriately. Not, like I said, I'm not super good with speaking, especially with something that is as ambiguous and funky as like gender and dysphoria. It's sometimes difficult for me to put into words. But yeah, of any of the things that I would say, if you could take away from what I'm trying to say, is that like gender is a wiggly thing. And if it feels like nobody else supports you and your perception of yourself, then I really hope that you know that, like, I mean, I do, and I know that there are a ton of other people out there who definitely do. They understand like where you're at, have an idea of how you're feeling. And I really, really hope that everybody is able to eventually find like very supporting and loving people to surround yourself with, because if you haven't already, like it's definitely something that's possible. And I just hope that everybody can eventually get to that place. But yeah, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Kai. It was really thoughtful and very self-aware, and I really appreciate what you had to say there. And I think that a lot of people, especially if they are exploring the different facets of their gender identity, could really relate to. So thank you again very much. As we are just going to go ahead and keep rolling forward here, we're going to bring up our next speaker, Chris Goins, and his pronouns are he, him, and his. He is a Columbus native and Army veteran. Currently, Chris works side by side with his wife to help better educate the LGBTQ community on finance and investing. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about here as we continue our talk about our bodies. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and unmute him. Hold on just a moment.
Awesome. Bear with me. I'm not sure now that I'm talking, my toddler may appear while I'm doing this. So apologies in advance. It's one of the luxuries of doing anything at home nowadays. As was said before, my name is Chris. I am 33. I go by he, him, his pronouns. I had the honor of, being kind of selected to do this, which is kind of out of my norm, because just like everybody else, I don't like the speaking of people to people, even though my career choice requires me to speak in front of people, right? It's a hat that I gotta put on, right? So every time I do any type of public speaking. But when I was approached about the topic of being the body, like that is a huge portion. I feel like that's a huge part of the trans experience in general, for real. And my take on it is, one night I was just thinking, so I have my own little notes here that I'll probably be looking at most of the time to keep me on track, because I am ADHD. So I could probably, if I would be left field if I didn't do this. So let me go ahead and get started. First things first that kind of came to my mind was, have you ever walked into a room, and then when you walked into that room, like you immediately felt uncomfortable, like you had like a small anxiety attack inside you, and you just want to like immediately turn around and run and leave that room? Like, I bet you there's a lot of us that could say yes to that very statement. But unfortunately, that's how I feel every time somebody addresses me in the female pronouns, or sees me as female. And the downside to it is there's no room for me to run from. There's no place for me to go, because that is how I'm perceived. Um, I kind of just want to throw this in here too. Was yesterday actually was having a conversation with a young lady about an actual celebrity that is supporting his transgender child, and whether or not that was right or not. I applaud him for that, especially with all the social perception of that. Like I do, for real. But during our conversation, I kind of had like an epiphany, like how important it is for our mind, our bodies, and our souls to align. And I feel like that in itself is very important for us, for our human existence, survival, and success in anything in our lives. So I kind of wanted to throw that in because I feel like that's very important, and I feel like that was for somebody. I'm not sure, but I feel like that somebody needed to hear that. But kind of back to the topic is the thought of someone seeing me as a female, and that I can never change it, accept it, and to have self-love, is something that it doesn't sit right with me. Like, I hear that constant. I heard it yesterday in my conversation. I've heard it by different people out there in the world that doesn't understand the trans experience or the non-binary experience, or just let alone the LGBT experience. Like, they just need to self-love. They need to find themselves as who they are. They're meant to be in this box, and that's the way they're supposed to be. So that right there, that scares me. Like, this reading that from other people, hearing that from other people, it just puts me in a point to where it's just like, I get uncomfortable, where I don't. It gets to the point where I understand why people like decide to take their lives, because the amount of people in this community, in the trans experience, that take their own lives because of the lack of acceptance of other people is extremely high than it is in any of the other LGBTQ boxes out there, or just in general in life. And to be honest, I envy every person who is comfortable in their assigned gender. I cannot account for a moment in my life where I was truly comfortable in my skin. As a teenager, when my body began to change, that thing called puberty, which I'm currently going through #2, as you could tell by my voice, that my lovely wife pointed out the other day to me. Uh, Sorry, I lost my spot. But as a teenager, my body was going through these changes. I didn't like it, and as more and more as it started to change, the more I wanted it to stop. I used to pray. I used to wish for it to stop. Even for the point of reverse psychology on myself, where I was trying to force myself to accept it, and it was an ultimate failure. Unfortunately, there's pictures that I can't get a hold of them all to burn them, but they're out there, But as soon as I find them, trust me, I have my lighter ready. Okay, I'm gonna those suckers are going down. But and so once I got of age and was able to uh, to buy my own clothing, because as teenagers, you had to rely on your mama and your parents to buy you clothes, and the thought of going to the men's section and buying clothes, I was looked at like, no, you in the wrong area. You need to go over there. And so once I got of age and was able to buy my own clothing, I was in the men's section, and I tried my hardest to hide my body and make it appear more masculine. You know, I may not have looked more masculine, because I know there's a huge perception of a tomboy, or, you know, female wearing men's clothes. Like, I know that was there, and there's moments where I felt that, but it made me feel good inside that I was appeared more on the masculine spectrum of things than I did in a female. Like, my female body that I had was hidden for real. And there's moments and times where prior to even knowing what transgender was or any of this, because I actually learned about transgender maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I didn't know or have words for any of this. So cis, dysphoria, all these words are new to me into my vocabulary, you know, and I'm still not 100% sure I can give anybody a definition for some of them. Like, I'm still working on it. So bear with me. Um, but don't get me wrong, I know, not to sound conceited, but I know I have a nice female body. Like, I've been told I see it. If it was the other way around and I had to date myself, heck yeah, I would date me. But that's not me. I'm not that woman. That's not who I am. Like, I don't want to say it was wasted on me, but mentally I can't be that woman, you know, that my body is for. And there's times where my dysphoria gets so bad when I see it, like, I just want to just hide in a box. And I know there's a lot of people that express that. Like, my therapist tell me all the time, you can't be a hermit. You got to go out there and experience life. And I'm like, do I have to? People see me if I do that, you know? But unfortunately, that's true. And there's been many times too, prior to starting my transition, I was sometimes, in this, I talk myself off the ledge because of how dark I would feel. But there was times where how I got myself out of the door was, in my next lifetime, I'm going to come back as the man that I'm supposed to be, that I feel like in here, because, you know, that's where it all is. Like I said, mind, body, and soul, you know. So, and then again, I tell myself, you know, once I was like, no, I can't wait till next lifetime. I need this lifetime. I was like, you know, I'm gonna wait until my grandmother passes away. Then I'm gonna start my transition. But she told me she's gonna live until 125. And I'm like, I don't know if I can wait that long, Grandma. I love you though. So it was after the murder of my brother that I was like, you know, life is too short and tomorrow isn't promised to nobody. So, not to be too dark, but after that realization that if I cannot leave this world, I might as well live this world as me and perceived as me in the body that is rightfully I'm supposed to be. Unfortunately, because I was not born in a male body, there's going to take some surgeries and every 2 week shot to myself. You know, not everybody could do. You know, and that's what I'm going to do. Like, for my trans experience, yes, I started HRT actually back in March. I have not decided on all the surgeries that's going to be out there available to me, but I'm definitely for sure going to have top surgery. So, because I realized I missed the part that in my little speech here, but for the most part, everybody's like I said before, like, everybody's trans experience is different. You know, your trans is not my trans, their trans is not mine. You know, everybody has their choices on what they want to go through. And for me, myself, my body needs to match and align with everything else in order for me to be happy with me. But uh, that's all I kind of have for you. Hopefully next time we meet, I have a full beard, but we'll see. All right.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for, I'm just switching this over here. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, and don't worry about going dark. I mean, that is definitely something that a lot of us can relate to, is that time of self-reflection and that time of really diving in and facing our own demons, our own misconceptions, even aspects of the community that we are now part of that at one point we didn't really know that much about. I was in a similar place before I started transitioning, of just not having had been in the community on purpose and then finding myself in it and figuring out what happens now. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive a little bit into what you're looking at here if you're watching as we hit the little midway point. So just to catch up, this is T Talks, which is, you know, a little short for trans storytelling, or Trans Talks, which is transgender led and focused. Today for this month, because we do every fourth Wednesday, we are, and actually this is the fifth Wednesday. I know someone out there is checking me on that. And yes, because we decided to do Zoom, we just went ahead with the end of the month. So, but we're talking about our bodies, and what that can entail is body positivity. Body positivity and body acceptance is a fairly recent pursuit in our culture. These are two aspects of being transgender that can be quite challenging and very emotional. Under the trans umbrella, our journeys are intersectional and encompass a wide spectrum of nuanced identities that are specific to the individual, just like both of our speakers just now were saying, how, like, you know, it's a personal approach. And this is something that's good to acknowledge if you're watching and you are the family member or a partner of a trans person, or if you know someone who is trans, you want to be an ally, you want to be kind of up to speed on things. It is something to keep in mind, is that there isn't a right way to do it. There is just what is right for me, the individual, right? And that's what really matters, because at the end of the day, you know, it's my skin I've got to live in. So I will just need to do whatever I need to do as a trans person to get to a place where I feel congruent, which is the opposite of dysphoria, right? Dysphoria is that dissonance of how you're experiencing me and how I experience myself, and congruent is when they come together and the two are as close to the same as it can be. And again, everyone's experience is different. So not to bogart the time there, I'm really appreciative of everyone who's tuned in, and thank you for Kai and for Chris for sharing their experiences. Up next, we're going to bring in Natalie, and I will give you a little intro on Natalie here. Hang on just a moment. A little handy dandy didgeridoo bopper, cellular dingly doo. Okay, so Natalie is a parent, an elementary school music teacher, pardon me. And she also heads the all trans pop band called Dream States. Pronouns are she, her, hers. Her band just released part 1 of their 6th album. Kudos. You know, I've been following Natalie's career here, and they really are phenomenal. And she's a incredibly gifted musician. Let me just say, I don't think there's an instrument that Natalie can't play. Highly jealous. And she also plays bass guitar for a number of other acts around Ohio. So without further ado, I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to bring Natalie on. Natalie, you can go ahead and take it away once.
All right. So, hi guys, my name is Natalie. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry, I've been having connectivity issues and volume issues and all kinds of stress and anxiety issues that I can have today. It's been a really stressful day, and I almost didn't make it to this, but I always appreciate a chance to talk, and especially a chance to do something not music related, because those kind of things don't happen to me that often. He's like, sing, okay, go home, okay, bye. Anyway, so my journey with my body through my transition has been, you know, it's been a journey. I came out in 2013, so this September will be 7 years for me. And this November will be 6 years on hormones for me. And those were big events in my life that I struggled to even step to. When I first came out, I was married, and I have 2 kids. I came out when my ex-wife was 8 months pregnant with our son, our second kid. And I really wanted to wait, but I just couldn't, because I had some serious darkness showing up in my life, and I just couldn't hold it anymore. So when I first came out, I reassured my ex-wife that things weren't going to be changing too much by claiming myself to be non-operative, that this was just going to be an identity thing and my body wasn't going to go through any changes. And as the time went on and I, got accustomed to a life of wigs and padded hip girdles and padded bras, that I really just started to feel the weight of it all. And I really started to feel like an imposter in my life still. Like I had to take off my man costume and put on what was essentially a woman costume. I still couldn't ever just go out of the house and just be. So eventually the time came where I had to say that I need to at least, consider hormones. And so we went to the doctor and we got me started on those. And I assured my ex that it was all going to go so slow that, there would be time to adjust. Cutting to the chase, I am divorced today. We've been divorced for about 4 years now, and our marriage lasted for a good 2.5 years after I came out. We really had a good thing happening for a while. Then she essentially had to come out as straight, which is nobody's fault. She didn't sign on for a relationship with a woman, so I had to give that, no fault to anyone around. There were a lot of moments leading up to that really sort of saw me acknowledging that what was happening was due to my transition and that my body was changing. I had a moment where, these are a couple of shower stories actually, because a lot of my revelations happen in the shower. I don't know if anyone else has that happening much, but it's also where I have to most closely encounter my own body, and that's a difficult time. There was a time my ex-wife and I used to shower a lot together, and after I started hormones, it kind of stopped. And then later I was like, well, we haven't done this in a long time. Let's try this. So she was like, okay. And as soon as I got my shirt off, she looked at me and she was like, well, you got breasts. And I could tell the resignation in her voice was just like, okay, that's kind of like, that's it for me, And things steadily progressed downhill from there for us. I had a moment in the shower where my ring literally slipped off my hand for the first time since I took my vows. My ring accidentally slipped off my finger in the shower, because subtly your body changes, and the thin layer of fat that my body has gained, that has rounded out all my corners, also had the effect of sort of slimming away my knuckles. And so my HRT was literally causing my marriage to slip through my fingers, in the most literal sense that there was. So there were a lot of moments where I had to recognize that this is painful, but it's what I have to do to have my life, to be able to be me without any wigs or any excess padding. Since quarantine started, I haven't even put on makeup, unless I've had classes to teach online, and sometimes I barely get around to shaving. So it's like I'm still redefining myself in my body every day, trying to accept my body for what it is and give myself the love that I feel I deserve. But I never really experienced true dysphoria until my body started to change. I never had big problems with my body as a guy. I marched in drum corps, and I had a nice, slim, lean, muscular body. It was a perfectly fine male body. There was nothing I saw that it couldn't do. And it wasn't until parts of me started to become feminine that I started to really desire that femininity in my body, and I started to really sort of grind at the inconsistency I was starting to see. And the more and more feminine my body has gotten, the more prone I am to dysphoria now, because the parts of me that were masculine now seem more and more out of place than they've ever been. So I keep going back to the fact that it's a struggle, but it really is. Insurance companies have been really hard to work with when it comes to operations. I actually won a sweepstakes for trans people. It was like a charity giveaway of $3,000 towards top surgery for me. But it was so stipulated that I couldn't use it. It was only good for a surgeon in Pennsylvania. I'm living in Ohio. And it was only good for that window of time. And it wouldn't cover anything else, including the travel or anything. My insurance refused to pick up the rest of it. They were like, we either cover everything or nothing. And I was like, that's a weird flex, but okay. And so I had to basically let that $3,000 grant expire because I couldn't make it to Pennsylvania, or come up with an additional $6,500. All I really want is to feel comfortable as myself without anything added on or painted on or strapped on. I just want to feel like the girl I know myself to be. And so I'm blessed that I have, partners that have been able to do that even when I can't. And up to and including this moment, I've got a wonderful partner. And they see me in ways that I can't see myself, and that's always a blessing when you can find that. I can't see my clock, nor do I have one available, but I'm sure that's enough rambling for me. So thank you all for being here, and remember that even if it's painful, it's better than not being you. Even if it sucks for a while, it's better than being fake. So thank you for having me.
Hello again. Thank you, Natalie, for sharing that. That was it was heartfelt and a lot of feels there. Definitely a lot of it, I think, is relatable for a lot of us in the community. I'm going to take this opportunity to do a couple of announcement things here. And then because of the time frame that we're at, I'm actually going to go ahead and throw in my 2 cents about the body as well to close this out. We did start a little bit late, so even though we're getting close on 8 o'clock, we're actually going to be going till more like 8:15 because we started a little late just to even it out to an hour. For those of you who are interested, who are seeing this and are interested in perhaps being a speaker, we have featured speakers that we try and do for each month. And we put the call out to anybody who is on the gender variant spectrum, right? So if you are non-binary, if you are like me, a binary trans person, any other variation of the trans experience that you identify with, all of these voices are valid. All of your voices are important, and all of them need to be lifted. Your stories are something that each affect us and help us feel connected to one another within the community, serve as a form of outreach for those of us in the early stages of figuring ourselves out and what's going on or not going on with our bodies, and also does provide an educational resource for people who want to better understand what the trans experience is, to see us and empathize with us as individuals and as people. Ultimately, this is what the mission statement of Tea Talks is all about. When someone who is trying to engage with a trans person, if they can see themselves in a trans person, they become relatable. If you can relate with a person, they're no longer a concept or some kind of idea or some kind of political tool to make a point. Become a human being, because we are human beings just trying to live our best lives. And the more that people outside of our community, and to be honest, within the LGBT community at large, can see that side of where we're coming from, I do believe we will begin to see some real healing in our community and a decrease in the kind of violence that we currently have to navigate, just living our best lives. If you are watching and you are a family member, a partner of, or a parent of, or even just someone who wants to be a good ally, we launched a side program called Transitions. And Transitions, which you can find by way of the Tea Talks Facebook page as a link. What we try and do there is, again, once a month, it is a peer-led support group for those who are trying to be the best support they can for the trans people in their lives. It's something I helped start, but I am not personally running it because I feel like that would put off some people. So actually my wife, Gwen, runs that with another one of our friends who is the spouse and parent of trans feminine people. And essentially, it's just a place where it is a safe environment if you are, let's say, a parent of someone who is trans identified and you want to deal with your own side of that transition. It's an important thing to remember as trans people that those in our lives are transitioning with us. And there is absolutely a mourning process that everyone is going through, including ourselves, where we in effect die to who we thought we were or were trying to be and then become reborn into who we are and into our authenticity. The people in our lives that are closest to us have to also go through a similar process. So the idea with transitions is to provide a safe outlet for them to do that without potentially triggering or saying something that may upset or harm the trans person in their life that they are trying to support, right? So it's a kind of training ground for getting the language down and having a place to sort of compare notes. So if you know of someone who could benefit from this group or are someone that could benefit from that group, you can always message in the T-Talks page and we can get you over to the correct page so that you can go ahead and reach out. They will be doing a Zoom event as well, not public, of course. It's closed doors for that, but you can reach out to the moderators and they'll set you up with a link, just to put that out there. Okay, so having gone through all of those little announcements that we try and do, if you ever have a chance to support Wild Goose Creative, I hope that you will. It is a nonprofit organization that provides not only a creative art space for artists, musicians, poets, and writers, but it also is a space for community building. And T-Talks is all about building community, helping to create safe spaces, where we can be as inclusive as possible. We put out the call to everyone in the trans community to come be a part of this. And obviously, as time goes on, more and more people, I hope, will feel comfortable with participating or even just coming to hear what we have to say. We are coming up on our 1-year anniversary, so August will be a special month for us. It'll be our first year doing this, and the community that we have built is sort of changed how T-Talks works. We spend usually the first half hour in real life actually having community. We have our speakers, then we do a little open mic, was the second part of it. So we have like an intermission after our final featured speaker. So we usually have things like chips and drinks or whatever. It's all very light. People get to talk. We have our open mic session, and then we have community that closes off the night. It's a really nice environment, and I hope that for those of you out there who want to be involved, you'll find ways to participate because, you know, we're all taking care of each other and we're all in this together in one form or another. Okay, so then my bit, talking about the body. And everyone has touched on this so far. Kai, Chris, Natalie, you all had really good points that you made. And like each of you have said, it's very individualistic. I know for myself, getting to a place where I felt in my body was really quite the challenge. Let me make sure I don't go over. Okay, I'm at the right time. So, when I was first coming out, I was told so many things. I was told, you're gonna make an ugly woman, you'll never be passable, people hate trans people. I was told every horrible, horrible thing that anyone could say to a person about them. You know, even things like women don't have lots of tattoos. Well, we all know that that's not true. But, you know, you get told things, and I was told things like, you're just not feminine enough. If they just took a second to meet me for more than 5 minutes. So there's a lot of negativity that I think that a lot of people in the trans community have to deal with, either from members of their family, people in their friend circle, even just random strangers like to throw in their 2 cents, especially with the online community being what it is. You've got a lot of random trollers that just want to like jump in and launch an attack. I've gone through that a few times from people that are known as TERFs, which are trans exclusionary radical feminists. I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but navigating that kind of hostility, especially when you're in a fragile place. So as a trans person, you're in a fragile place because you already have your self-doubt, right? Whatever age you decide that this is it, I need to own who I am and embrace my authenticity, or it's going to eat me alive. We've already built up some of our own concerns, like, will I be able to hold a job? Will I be able to get health care? Will my family still love me? Will I still have my friends? If you are not in a relationship, will I be able to have a relationship? And then there are the thoughts of what would that look like? I was having a conversation with a friend of mine today, actually, about this. They asked if your orientation changes. And I had spoken to my therapist about that sort of thing because it was a concern of mine. And what I have heard from people who have transitioned quite some time ago, and from therapists that have talked about it, your orientation is what it always was. But when you transition and embrace your authenticity, if you were repressing anything or trying to live up to a certain standard dictated by your assigned gender at birth, it may not make itself known to you until you freed yourself to be yourself, which I thought was an interesting bit of insight. You can definitely be like, well, I was assigned this at birth and I'm trying to fit in with that. So I'm going to do these things. I'm going to have these kind of friends and I'm going to date these kinds of people. And sometimes it lines up with your true orientation and sometimes it does not. Transition is a process. And like Chris mentioned, you start puberty over again because there's the physicality of starting hormones and your body sort of reworking itself. The endocrine system is almighty in the human body. And while that physicality is happening, but at the same time, however long it's taken you to get to a place of this is who I am, you have to unravel some trauma because you have repressed who you are for so long. I repressed who I was for a very long time. So when I finally said, Felicia needs to be, I need to embrace her, as a person, Felicia was at the emotional development of a 12 or 13-year-old, because from when I was 12, I was just piling things on top of her and ignoring her and pretending she didn't exist. So when I picked up at my current age, I picked up where I left off. So I've been trying to catch up to my calendar age in as much of a comfortable way as I can. And those are some of the mechanics I don't think a lot of people who are our support quite understand. Even if we have thought about it for our whole lives, we haven't really started processing it until we say, I'm going to transition and start that process, because then you have to take off all of this, all the masks, all the layers. You have to come out of your box that you put yourself into or someone else put you into, or however that works, and say, okay, this is who I am. Let's define that, and I definitely went through a lot of that. Before I transitioned, I tried to embrace the cishet guy ideal. I shaved my head. I was benching 220 at my height with 18-inch biceps. I was a bruiser. I was a bouncer in a fetish nightclub when I was in college. I did street fighting. I got into fights at punk shows because I was angry at myself and at the world, and I put myself at risk. I did Thai boxing for a long time. I've been shot, stabbed, I've been beat up, and I keep getting up because that's what I was always told you had to do as a guy. And it was really just shutting myself down. And I'm still tough. I'm still rough and tumble. Your girl can scrap, you know. I still carry a pocket knife and a roll of quarters wrapped up in electrical tape because you never know. The world's a hard place, you know. And as a Sicilian person, I have a bat in the trunk just in case. But the point is, you start figuring out who you are. And hopefully you get to a place where you start feeling the body. For me, what I ended up doing was I took up belly dancing. So it's a little mini plug here for a studio called Sacred Shimmy, run by Angie Never. I love this human being very much. It is such an amazing experience. Everything in my life is a metaphor, and my body as a metaphor is a muscle car that I didn't know how to drive. It was like my whole life I was driving a golf cart, and then I came out, started transitioning, and someone handed me like a fully blown out, Chevy with a 350 motor, nitrous, and a stick shift. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I'm learning how to drive this, and dancing for me got me to understand how my body moves in a way that I never understood. It gave me a very tactile sense of being in my body, because you have to. You have to be aware of your space. You have to be aware of your body. Otherwise you fall over and you hurt yourself, right? So it's a very physical way to understand how things move and who I'm becoming, especially my center of gravity changed. Natalie talked about her ring slipping off her finger. I went down a shoe size. Don't know why. Just one shoe size less. Very strange, random things that occur. And I started to recognize what my body's like. And I wanted to be able to talk a little bit because sometimes it's hard to deprogram our society's obsession with image. If you were indoctrinated as, like, you were assigned female at birth and you were indoctrinated in that culture, you're bombarded nonstop through all media platforms of this archetypal ideal of what a woman is. And any feminist will tell you that there are millions of types of women. And it's all about you defining to yourself, who am I as a woman? You know, you could be a woman that is 6 foot tall and buff and well cut with a crew cut. You could be a woman who is 5 foot nothing and into very long hair. Who knows, right? It's an individual expression, right? It's an individual journey, and understanding that for myself helped me have perspective. One of the things that I ended up doing was I took a photo of my sister and a photo of myself after I came out, and I mashed them up in Photoshop next to each other. So I had something to carry on my phone with me, which sounds, to me, to my own ears, sounds dumb and petty, but what it was a grounding exercise, because I wanted to see myself in a clear lens and not through the male gaze filter or what society tells me a woman should look like or act like or be. So the woman that I am is, I'm nurturing, but I can still get into a fist fight. I love my flowy skirts and I belly dance, but I can still work on a muscle car. I still play the guitar and I played drums for a long time, but I also know how to sew my own clothes if I want to. There's no right or wrong way to be a woman. There's no right or wrong way to be a masculine person. There's no right or wrong way to be non-binary. It's just what feels right. And I gave myself a realistic expectation by comparing myself visually with a female member of my family, because I didn't want to let myself get sucked into the notion. And Natalie was touching on this a little bit here, which is why I'm bringing it up. You know, I think before I started transitioning, I had this notion of, I'm going to change my face, and I'm going to have implants here, and I'm going to have implants here, and I'm going to get a rib removed, and I'm going to have this done and that done. And my head was spinning with like hundreds of thousands of dollars of money I would never see, because I don't earn that. I'm a blue collar working artist, and I do activism. There's not a lot of money in getting out there and sounding the bell and raising awareness, you know, and I'm happy to do the work, but it doesn't pay well. And there were these unrealistic expectations. I remember in high school, I had posters of what I thought was an ideal. These were women in rock music. These were models that, you know, I didn't understand that there was photo manipulation happening on the imagery. I didn't understand that. I just thought, how do I get from this to that? Because clearly this is what I need. What I have come to realize is, as I become Felicia, as I mature in my process of transition, I realize I kind of like my body. I've got some muscle. I like that. I'm strong. I'm not bulky like I was, which makes me feel better with my dysphoria. I did have some affirmation procedures. Gonna keep it, you know, I'm not gonna go into a lot of detail because not the format, but that helped me see my body as my body and not his. So I don't know that I won't always have dysphoria. I probably always will have some level of it. Every once in a while, I go to brush my teeth. The light is a certain way. I see him. I will be honest, that messes me up and ruins my day. But life doesn't stop. So I put on a face of makeup, pick out a pair of earrings that I like. I continue with my day. It subsides. And maybe as time goes by, that will happen less and less often. And that's something I could hope for anyone in the trans community, is that at some point you start finding that congruency. The way that you feel starts matching with what you see and what other people see as well. And I would put, just as a sort of a PSA, if you are someone who is an ally of trans people, you're a family member of trans people, what goes on in our pants or doesn't go on in our pants, what's going on under our clothes is our business. It's not appropriate ever to ask. There are certain situations where I will be on a panel and I will say, right now, in this context, you can ask anything you want, nothing is too embarrassing. But unless someone has actually given you that disclaimer, it has no effect on your life. Unless you are in a sexual relationship with a trans person, our bodies are our bodies. And we're working on doing what we have to do to feel right in our bodies. And really, it doesn't affect you, so don't ask. The thing to ask a person who is trans is, hi, I'm Jane Doe Public, she and her pronouns, and you are? And the trans person will usually reply, hi, I'm Felicia, she and her pronouns, nice to meet you. That should be the beginning and the end of the interrogation. Just respect the name, respect the pronouns, move on with life. Get time to get to know the person. What kind of books do I like? I love Stephen King. What kind of music do you like? I am on a death metal kick right now. I've been listening to the hardcorest, loudest, aggressive music I could ever find. There's a band called Vader that I am in love with, and a band called The Agonist that I'm in love with. Thanks for asking. What kind of music do you like? It can be that easy when you're talking to someone who is in the trans community, or any person, really. Your go-to should not be, hi, nice to meet you. So, penis or vagina, what do you got? Let's whip it out and compare. Come on. Anyway, so that's my little bit about the body. Whoever you are, whether you're trans or not trans, loving yourself takes effort. Accepting yourself as who you are takes forward thinking, right? There's a bit of self-love, there's a bit of self-awareness. It's a mindful practice that doesn't come easy, I don't think, to anybody. You have to want to know yourself. And the more you know yourself, the more you allow yourself to be yourself, I feel like the easier it becomes. You start building up a sense of confidence, you start getting acquainted with yourself. And then you have communities like T-Talks and peer groups. Reach out and always know that you're not alone. And that's my whole little bit there. Thank you for for watching and for tuning in. And thank you again to Natalie, Chris, and Kai, and also to Wild Goose for participating today and for giving us a platform. Do you want to end off with anything? Okay, so I'm gonna be done here. I love you all so much. Thank you. And reach out if you want to participate, if you want to do an open mic segment, or if you want to say some words about the body, you can contact us through our T-Talks page on Facebook, and we can get a remote recording from you as an open mic, and we will post it. Thank you again. Have a good night.
This was so great, so thank you all for joining. And again, you can learn more about Wild Goose at wildgoosecreative.com. And you can always reach out to me at lydia@wildgoosecreative.org. Thank you, everyone.